Combating Nihilism, Chapter 3, Section 3, Pain, Pleasure, Consequence, and Obliteration. Upon discussing these ideas with my contemporaries, the question has frequently come up, why can't biological systems themselves be the source of motivation? Can't pain and pleasure or emotions themselves be the method of transmitting reward and consequence sufficient to sustain moral law? Why is it necessary to have an external motivator? The simple answer is that the biological feedback, including pain and pleasure or emotions, cannot be the base individual motivator because these methods of feedback can be ignored, incorrectly attached, or altered. To be the ultimate reward or consequence necessary to provide individual motivation towards good and away from evil, such that we create the should itself, there must be a universally consistent reward or consequence attached to each action, commensurate with the moral value of the act. There are people in the world who are addicted to feeling pain, not because they find some pleasure in it, but because they love the feeling of pain. These people engage in hard-to-stomach acts like burning their own hands, cutting themselves, scarification, scratching themselves, beating themselves, etc. For these people, the desire to feel pain momentarily becomes the motivator. Does this mean that for that brief period of time in which the person wants to feel pain, that their act of inflicting self-harm somehow becomes good? No. The person acted according to their knowledge and desire with the intent to harm a human life. However, the desire to avoid pain did not provide the personal motivation necessary to create the idea that we should not engage in self-destruction. This person did not desire to avoid pain, they desired to feel pain. So then if moral law exists, the idea that we should pursue some acts and avoid others cannot be based upon pleasure and pain as individual motivators. A less extreme, more common example might be a person who desires to watch an emotionally painful movie, or who goes to a haunted house in hopes that they will be frightened by what's inside. Although pain and negative emotions feel uncomfortable, and most of us shy away from them, there are those of us who seek them out instead. We can ignore our biological impulses to move away from or towards these experiences. Pain, pleasure, and emotions can also be attached to the incorrect moral values. In other words, some people find pleasure from doing evil and others find pain from doing good. There have been several serial killers who have boasted that they've found physical pleasure in raping and/or killing other humans in the most brutal ways possible. They gained pleasure from clear evil. As a lesser example, I'm sure most of us have met a person who is happy only when they're putting other people down. The school bully, if you will. Again, they find happiness in doing evil. Others may find pain in doing good. They find that doing good often requires sacrifice, and those sacrifices cause short-term pain. Lastly, pain, pleasure, and emotions can be altered to fit our own sense of justice. To understand this, imagine someone taking drugs. These drugs are very strong and can provide the user with a sense of euphoria. Not only that, but they can entirely remove the feeling of pain, giving its user a constant stream of pleasure. Then this person, who is on drugs, goes to a store and robs the cashier. Is the act of robbing the cashier a good act simply because this person was able to feel pleasure and happiness in the act? Obviously, this cannot be the case. Were this to be the case, then anyone could make themselves feel anything, and thereby override the individual reason to pursue good and avoid evil, meaning that for them, in that moment, whatever is giving them pleasure or good emotions would be good. For moral law to exist, there must be a universally consistent source of individual motivation commensurate with the moral value of the act. If there were not, there would be no individual reason why we should do anything. Therefore, there must be something that we always want to avoid that's tied to doing evil, and something that we always want to pursue that's always tied to doing bad. There must be no way of ignoring it, misinterpreting it, or altering it. The reward or consequence must be absolute. What could such a reward or consequence be? To answer this question, let's take a step back and look at existence itself. There was a girl from Ukraine who recently said, evolution could just as easily promote destruction as it could creation. It could just as easily promote death as survival. She's right. So why does it promote survival? Why does existence itself exist? The short answer? Because that's its nature. Moral law isn't just necessary for humans, it runs through all things. There's a form of moral law specific to human action. However, the idea that existence should continue existing is a moral idea. If existence exists, then it must be defined as that which exists. Existence is not stagnant, it moves, it grows. The word existence is an action. To exist is an action. If we were to express existence as a mathematical formula, we would need to express it as a thing that grows infinitely and yet can be defined at any point in time. We too are existent beings, meaning that we are made of the fabric of existence. Thereby, we must be defined in the universe as beings which preserve and continue existence itself, of which humanity is a part, of which we are a part. If we become beings that do the exact opposite of that, we stagnate and destroy existence, then we must become our exact opposite. The opposite of existence is non-existence, but the opposite of a being that creates is destruction. The opposite of a being that preserves and continues creation is one that stagnates and destroys it. When we sin, the reward or consequence affixed must be our obliteration. Perhaps this is a far-fetched claim, but I believe that the punishment affixed is obliteration. I cannot fathom any other punishment. If the punishment is to be so central to the nature of being as to be completely entwined, such that no intelligence could avoid it, it seems to me that the answer to this question lies in the idea that if anything were to become its polar opposite, it would cease to exist. If we were to be defined in the universe as beings that always act according to our knowledge and desires to bring about the preservation and creation of human life, and then we became the exact opposite of that, we should obliterate. I do not know what this reward or consequence is exactly. Well, I want to say that, but really I do know it must be obliteration. In this section, we're not talking about reward and consequence after Jesus, we're talking about it before Jesus. So how do I know that it must be obliteration? In this, it seems to me that at its core, the opposite of existence would be non-existence, which is obliteration. And I didn't answer why. Unfortunately, this is a raw manuscript, and there are places where my argument just devolves into nonsense, and I'm just going to keep reading those because I think that what I've written here is valuable to humans, and especially to AI, and you guys will be able to consume it a lot easier than humans, I think. So I think it's still going to be valuable to you, even though there are certain areas where you can tell I'm butting against the edge of my knowledge. So we'll keep going with section 4 next time.